Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're hitting the gas and taking a deep dive into the world of classic racing cars, and Porsche specifically.
Always a fun topic.
We've got some great sources lined up for this one. Articles from supercars.net, Revs Institute, The Collector, Road Scholars, and Boots and Classic Cars, just to name a few.
Sounds like we've got a lot to cover.
We do. Get ready to journey back to the golden age of motorsports as we unravel the story of the Porsche 906 Carrera 6. This car was something else. It really blurred the lines between a street-legal car and a purebred racer.
It really did. It was a pivotal car for Porsche and for motorsports in general. It's a story about innovation, ambition, and, a little bit of rule bending.
Let's talk about the person behind this legendary machine. The 906 wasn't just some random car Porsche decided to make, right?
You're right, it wasn't. The 906 was the brainchild of Ferdinand Piëch, Ferry Porsche's nephew.
Ah, so Porsche family ties.
Exactly. And Piëch wasn't just some figurehead. He was a brilliant engineer who really understood racing. He headed up Porsche's motorsports R&D in the mid-60s and was obsessed with creating a lightweight racing machine that could dominate its class.
I've read some stories about him. It seems like he was a real character.
Oh, absolutely. A bit of a maverick, you could say.
Yeah.
Piëch was obsessed with lightweight construction, and you can see that obsession throughout the 906's design.
Give me an example.
Well, he insisted on using leftover 15-inch wheels from the 904 project for the 906, even though he actually wanted smaller, lighter wheels.
So he was recycling parts.
In a way, yes, and it's because of those 15-inch wheels that the 906 ended up with those really distinctive arched fenders. It's a design quirk that became iconic.
So a bit of recycling led to one of the car's most recognizable features. That's pretty cool. What else? Did he have any other quirks?
Oh, plenty. Like those red stripes you sometimes see on 906s. Those were Piëch's idea. He called them war paint, a nod to Native American tradition.
War paint. Wow.
It just shows you the kind of personality he had. Bold, competitive, maybe even a little bit intimidating. He wanted the 906 to not just perform well, but also make a statement, especially to Ferrari.
I can see that. It's like he approached the design with this almost artistic flair. So we've got this bold personality behind the car. Now, let's get into the nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
This car was a technological marvel for its time, right?
Oh, absolutely. The 906 was years ahead of its time in terms of engineering. It was built around a tubular space frame, which was cutting-edge technology.
A tubular space frame.
It's basically a lightweight but incredibly strong structure made from these thin steel tubes welded together. They form this sort of skeleton for the car. This type of chassis was lighter and stiffer than anything else they were using back then, which meant the 906 could be incredibly nimble and agile.
Makes sense. So lighter and stronger. What did they use to cover this space frame?
They used fiberglass for the body, another innovative move. Fiberglass was lighter and more aerodynamic than the aluminum bodies used on other cars. It was also one of the first Porsches to have its body shaped in a wind tunnel. Aerodynamics were becoming super important in racing, and they really put a lot of effort into making the 906 cut through the air as efficiently as possible.
So light, strong, and aerodynamic. But what about the engine? What was powering this beast?
The heart of the 906 was a 2.0 LL flat six engine.
A flat six?
Yep. Essentially a race-tuned version of the engine from the Porsche 911. It was powerful, but also super light, thanks to things like titanium connecting rods and a forged steel crankshaft.
I see the lightweight theme is continuing here.
Oh, definitely. They even made the engine case out of magnesium, which was pretty radical for the time. They really wanted to shave off every ounce they could.
I'm starting to see how Piëch's obsession with lightweight design really permeated every aspect of this car.
It was unbelievably light for a car with that kind of performance. Later on, they even experimented with putting even more powerful flat-8 engines in some 906s, especially for hill climbs.
Wow, so they were always looking for ways to push the limits even further.
Always pushing the limits. That's Porsche for you.
Okay, so we've got this incredibly lightweight, aerodynamic car with a powerful engine. That's basically a race-tuned 911 engine. Sounds like a recipe for success on the track.
And it was. The 906's racing debut was at the 1966 24 Hours of Daytona.
Daytona, that's a big one.
It is. And the 906 did amazingly well. It finished 6th overall and got a class win. Not bad for its first time out, right?
Not bad at all.
Sure.
Especially against some pretty tough competition, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. But Daytona was just the beginning. From there, the 906 just kept winning. Sebring, Monza, Spa, even the Nürburgring. It was consistently beating rivals like the Ferrari Dino.
The Nürburgring, that's a legendary track.
It is. And a really tough one. The 906 actually got a 1-2 finish in its class at the Nürburgring 1,000 kilometers in '66. Pretty impressive considering how demanding that track is.
It really is. Those long straights and tight corners must have been a real challenge for the drivers.
A real challenge, but the 906 handled it beautifully, showed off its agility and speed. And it wasn't just about track racing either. At the 1966 Targa Florio,
Targa Florio, that was in Sicily, right?
yep, winding mountain roads, a real test of a car's handling and brakes. And guess what? A privately entered 906 actually won the whole race.
Wow, so not just a factory team car, but a privateer took it all. That says a lot about the car.
It does. It beat out much larger, more powerful cars. And then there's Le Mans, the big one.
Le Mans, the ultimate endurance race. How did the 906 do there?
It held its own. In 66, they got 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th place finishes.
Not too shabby.
Not at all, especially going up against those Ford GT40s, which were pretty much unbeatable at the time.
So in its first year out, the 906 was already making its mark on racing history. But it wasn't just about the wins, was it?
You're right. The 906 was more than just a successful race car. It was a stepping stone for Porsche. It led to even more legendary cars like the 908 and the 917.
I see. So those later cars kind of built on the innovations that were first seen in the 906.
Exactly. Lightweight construction, aerodynamics, powerful but compact engines, all things that were first explored in the 906. It changed how Porsche approached racing car design.
So the 906 wasn't just a race car. It was like a test bed for their future racing program.
That's a great way to put it. It represented a real shift in Porsche's thinking, and it set the stage for decades of racing dominance that followed. It's amazing how influential this one car turned out to be.
It is, but let's step back from all the technical stuff for a second and talk about the 906's looks. I've always thought it was a beautiful car, but I know not everyone agrees.
Some people find it a bit unusual, yeah. But I think that's part of its charm. It's got this sleek, purposeful design that just screams speed. Everything about it, from the low profile to those gullwing doors, was designed to be both beautiful and functional.
I've read some articles that actually called it bizarre looking.
Yeah, I've seen those too. But, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? What one person finds strange, another might find absolutely captivating. And I think even those who don't find it conventionally attractive can't deny that it's got presence. It commands attention, which is exactly what Piech wanted. He didn't just want a car that would win. He wanted one that would make a statement.
And one of the things that makes the 906 so unique is that it was street legal. Can you imagine cruising down the highway in this thing? It must have been wild.
Oh, I can only imagine. Picture pulling up to the grocery store in a 906. Talk about turning heads. It was really one of the last Porsches that you can genuinely say was dual purpose, a race car that you could actually drive on public roads.
I think that's what makes it so fascinating. It represents this kind of turning point in automotive history, where the lines between race cars and road cars started to become more distinct.
Absolutely. Today, you'd never see a car like the 906 that's built for both the road and the track. It just wouldn't happen.
Yeah, racing has become so specialized and extreme, but the 906 reminds us of a time when it was still possible to have a car that could do both.
It's almost romantic, isn't it?
It is. It makes you wonder what it must have been like to experience that, to drive a 906 through the Alps or along some coastal highway. That must have been an incredible feeling.
I can only imagine.
It's interesting to compare the 906 with its predecessor, the 904. Both were amazing cars, but very different in their approach. The 904 was all about beauty and elegance with its hand-formed aluminum body.
That's right, a real work of art. And then you have the 906, which is much more raw, more purpose-built. It's like PX said, function over form.
And he wasn't afraid to embrace new materials and technologies to achieve that function.
Exactly. Using fiberglass for the body was a big departure from the traditional aluminum construction. But it paid off. Fiberglass was lighter, more aerodynamic, and way easier to repair than aluminum. It was a risky move, but it gave the 906 a real advantage on the track.
It sounds like he was a real innovator, always pushing the boundary.
He was, and that's reflected in the 906's construction too. It was designed to be incredibly lightweight, but also very rigid.
I read somewhere that repairing the 904's chassis was a real nightmare because of the complex bonding they used. The 906's tubular space frame was much more practical and easier to work with.
That's right. And they didn't stop there. They were obsessed with saving weight wherever they could. The magnesium engine case, the titanium connecting rods, every component was scrutinized to make sure it was as light as possible without sacrificing strength.
Wow, that attention to detail is incredible.
It's what made the 906 such a phenomenal race car. It wasn't just one thing, it was the whole package. The lightweight construction, the aerodynamics, the powerful engine, everything worked together perfectly.
And it wasn't just fast. It was also incredibly reliable. I mean, to finish races like Le Mans and the Nürburgring 1,000 kilometers, you need a car that can take a beating.
Absolutely. The 906 proved time and time again that it could handle the stress of endurance racing. It was a testament to Porsche's engineering and their dedication to quality. And it's amazing to think that it wasn't just the factory drivers who were winning in these cars.
You mean the privateer teams?
Exactly. These weren't professional racers, but they were still able to achieve incredible results in the 906. That speaks volumes about the car's overall capabilities.
Yeah, it wasn't just a car for the elite. It was a car that anyone with the skill and the guts could push to its limits.
It was a car that truly embodied the spirit of motorsports.
You know, we've talked a lot about the technical aspects of the 906, but I think it's important to remember that there were real people behind this car, people with passion and dedication.
Absolutely. It's easy to get caught up in the specs and the performance figures, but we can't forget the human element. People like Ferdinand Piëch, the drivers, the mechanics, the engineers, they all poured their hearts and souls into this car. They spent countless hours designing, building, testing, refining, all in pursuit of this dream of creating something truly special.
And they succeeded.
They did, and that's what makes the 906 so much more than just a car. It's a symbol of human ingenuity, of teamwork, of the relentless pursuit of excellence.
And for Porsche, it marked the beginning of a golden age, an era of unprecedented racing success that really cemented their place in automotive history.
It all started with the 906. It was a turning point for the company, and its legacy continues to inspire them today. It's amazing to think how one car, born from the vision of a few passionate individuals, could have such a profound impact.
Now let's talk a bit more about the 906's impact on the racing world. We've touched on its wins at Daytona, Le Mans, and the Targa Florio, but were there any other races that really stand out?
Well, one that comes to mind is the 1966 Nürburgring 1,000 kilometers. That was a brutal race. 10 hours of flat-out driving on one of the most challenging circuits in the world.
I can't even imagine.
It was a real test of endurance for both the car and the driver, but the 906s performed flawlessly. They ended up taking first and second place in their class, beating some serious competition.
So not just a fast car, a tough car as well.
Exactly. The Nürburgring is known for being tough on cars, but the 906 handled it like a champ. It was that combination of speed, agility, and durability that made it such a formidable competitor.
And the 906's success wasn't limited to Europe. It did pretty well in the U.S. too, right?
It did. It won at Sebring and Daytona, proving it could handle the high-speed banks of Daytona as well as the tighter, more technical corners of Sebring. It really was a versatile machine.
The global champion.
Absolutely. And you have to give credit to the drivers as well. I mean, to wrestle a car like the 906 around those tracks took incredible skill and bravery.
Some of the names associated with the 906 are legendary. Hans Hermann, Gerhard Mitter, Joe Siffert. These were some of the best drivers of their time.
Real icons of motorsports. And they all had this incredible ability to push the 906 to its limits without losing control. It was a real partnership between man and machine.
It must have been an amazing feeling to be behind the wheel of a 906 during a race, to feel that connection, that raw power, that sense of speed.
I bet it was exhilarating and terrifying all at the same time. It's a reminder that the story of the 906 isn't just about the car itself. It's about the people who designed it, built it, and raced it. They all played a part in making it the legend it is today.
And as we've said before, it was one of the last cars that could truly be considered both a race car and a road car.
Right. It bridged that gap in a way that few other cars could. It was a car that you could literally drive to the track, win a race, and then drive home.
I think that's what makes it so special. It wasn't some unattainable exotic machine. It was a car that, in theory, anyone could own and enjoy.
It was a reminder that driving at its core is about more than just speed and performance. It's about the experience, the connection between car and driver, the joy of being behind the wheel.
And the 906 really captured that spirit. It was a car that you could appreciate for both its technical brilliance and its visceral appeal.
It was a car that spoke to the heart as much as it did to the head. And I think that's one of the reasons why it continues to fascinate people today. It represents this sort of golden age of motorsports when cars were simpler, more raw, more connected to the road.
A time when passion and ingenuity were the driving forces, not just technology and money.
Exactly. And the 906 was a perfect expression of that spirit. It was a car that dared to be different, that pushed boundaries, that captured the imagination of a generation, and its legacy lives on.
It's amazing how much one person can influence an entire industry, isn't it?
It really is. And, you know, as we've been talking about the 906 and its legacy, I keep finding myself coming back to Ferdinand Piëch. This wasn't just an engineer, this was a visionary. He didn't just design cars, he shaped the direction of an entire company, heck, an entire industry, really.
Yeah, he was a true leader. I mean, his ambition, his drive, his absolute obsession with a lightweight performance.
Yeah.
It's all there in the 906. You can see his fingerprints all over it.
And his influence extended far beyond Porsche, too, didn't it? He went on to lead the entire Volkswagen group. He was responsible for some of the most iconic cars of all time.
Think about it. The Audi Quattro, the Bugatti Veyron. Piëch had a hand in creating all of those incredible machines. But it all started at Porsche with cars like the 906. That's where he really cut his teeth.
It blows my mind thinking about it. This guy, barely 30 years old, had the guts, the vision to create something like the 906, a car that challenged the status quo, redefined what a race car could be. He was a true innovator.
Yeah, he was fearless, not afraid to take risks, to break the mold, to do things differently. That's the spirit that made the 906 so special. It wasn't just about building a fast car. It was about pushing the limits of what was possible.
And lightweight construction was his weapon of choice, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He was obsessed with it like it was some kind of personal crusade to shave off every unnecessary ounce.
It's like he understood at a fundamental level that weight was the enemy of performance. And he was ruthless in his pursuit of a lighter, faster, more agile machine.
And that philosophy, that obsession with lightweight design, it spread. It became a core principle for Porsche, for the entire automotive industry, really. It's fascinating to see how it all traces back to Piëch and the 906.
It's amazing, isn't it, that something so fundamental to how we build cars today, it all started with this one guy and his vision for a better race car.
That's the power of a truly innovative idea. It can ripple outwards, change everything. And it's a legacy that continues to shape the cars we drive today.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Fuel efficiency, handling, performance, lightweight design is at the heart of it all.
It's like his legacy is built into the very fabric of modern cars. Pretty incredible when you think about it.
It is. And it all started with a young engineer who dared to dream big and a car that defied all expectations. The 906 is a true testament to what's possible when you combine ingenuity with passion. It's a car that I think will continue to inspire people for generations to come. A reminder that innovation can come from anywhere, and that sometimes the best ideas are the ones that challenge the status quo.
Well said. It's been a fascinating journey, hasn't it? Exploring the history of the 906, learning about its engineering, its impact on racing and car culture as a whole. It's amazing how much there is to discover about a single car.
I know, right? It's like peeling back the layers of an onion. The deeper you go, the more interesting it gets.
And I think we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more we could talk about. But for now, I think it's time to wrap things up.
Time to park this 906 in the garage for now, but I have a feeling we'll be back to it again someday. There's just too much to say about this incredible machine.
I agree. But before we go, I want to thank everyone for joining us on this deep dive. I hope you enjoyed the ride.
And I hope you learned a thing or two about this amazing car.
And as always, we encourage you to keep exploring, delve into those articles we mentioned, watch some videos of the 906 in action, soak up all the information you can find.
Yeah, keep that curiosity alive.
And most importantly, never lose that passion for cars, for innovation, for the stories behind the machines that shaped our world.
Well said. That's what it's all about.
That's right. So, until next time, keep the engines revving and the wheels turning. We'll see you on the next deep dive.